Hi everybody! Not every bleeding is a menstruation. That's the topic of today. I had a consultation with a woman in premenopause this week. She had not had her period or a bleeding in more than 6 months, and after she received a touch session with me, the next day she delightedly told me that her period had come back. And I told her that most likely the bleeding she was experiencing was not actually a true period. Why? Because in order for menstruation to occur, ovulation needs to have occurred. So it's very unlikely, if not to say impossible, that through receiving a touch session, suddenly the period arrives on the next day, because ovulation happens 2 weeks before menstruation. So it would be a really rare coincidence. And then it would actually not have had anything to do with the session at all. And she had made a similar experience twice before, when also her period had stopped, and after receiving an osteopathic session, it suddenly arrived. So the most likely scenario in this case actually is that it is not a true menstruation, that she's not ovulating anymore, which is actually quite common in premenopause, and that she is experiencing, as a consequence, a lack of progesterone, whereas estrogen continues to fluctuate and to actually make tissue grow, make the uterine lining grow. But without this balancing effect of progesterone, which usually happens after ovulation when we make the corpus luteum and this produces progesterone, and if it doesn't get fertilized, it dissolves, and that triggers menstruation, the shedding of the uterine lining. If that process doesn't happen because we don't ovulate, then estrogen just continues to make the uterine lining and other tissues grow unchecked. And eventually this becomes a burden for the body, and it can even lead to undesired tissue growth and symptoms. And so the body actually needs to cleanse, to unburden itself from this estrogen load from time to time and the tissues. And so most likely what happened is that through the deep relaxation she experienced, some mechanism was triggered in the brain that made her body finally shed what's usually called a withdrawal bleeding, also when we talk about the pill, for example. Because many people also are not aware that the bleed they experience while on the pill is not a true menstruation either. Because the pill actually does not regulate hormones. It shuts down completely your own hormonal production. So it replaces your natural hormones through synthetic ones, very powerful ones, signaling the brain that you're pregnant, and so the pituitary gland no longer stimulates the ovaries to produce hormones and to make the uterine lining grow and to ovulate. So there's no ovulation while on the pill. That's how you're protected from pregnancy. And because the body still needs to clear itself from estrogen, and also in order to make women accept the pill, there's this 1 week of placebos, empty pills, or depending on the type of pill that you take with a different composition, that then triggers a withdrawal bleeding, which has this intention to unburden your body to a certain extent of hormones, but also to give you the impression that everything's still going normal. Because many people indeed think that this is a period, and this is why they accept the pill. If they really understood that it shuts down their cycle completely, it would be more difficult. And so if you follow this logic, the pill actually cuts us off from what's truly going on in our body. It often is used to regulate hormones. As you just learned, it's not regulating anything, but that's how it's used when you experience irregular menstruation or symptoms, or even symptoms that are not related to the bleeding itself, like acne or mood swings. You might be prescribed the pill, and suddenly the cycle is regular, the PMS is better, you don't have that many cramps, but it's just suppressed. And once you get off the pill, it all comes back, if it comes back, because the hormonal system had been shut down. So it might take a while or never happen. Depends on how long you have been on the pill. And so you are disconnected from your body wisdom, from your inner reality and truth, from your deep feminine being. And so while the pill has indeed played its role in the empowerment of women, if you are in that stage where you want to reclaim your deep feminine, your evolved feminine, then the pill is actually doing you a great disservice. And you might want to consider discontinuing it and looking for alternatives. If you are experiencing spotting, bleeding between periods, that's also not your period, because some people say, oh, I got my period already after 2 weeks. That's usually then something else also, due to hormonal imbalances in the body, but also not to be confused with a true menstruation. If on the other hand you are in premenopause and you are taking HRT, hormonal replacement, which is not the same as the contraceptive pill, then you might actually still be experiencing your true cycle and menstruation, because hormonal therapy, hormonal replacement therapy, depending on which exact product and formula, is supplementing hormones, because your own hormones are reducing, and because they're not reducing in a linear way, this might indeed lead to symptoms. And so hormone replacement therapy aims at stabilizing that and easing the process with natural hormones often. And these are less powerful than the synthetic ones used in the pill. And so you might then go back to experiencing a more pleasant cycle. But again, it's not what's truly going on if you just left the body do what it's actually doing with all the tools that it has available. It kind of, again, impedes looking at root causes. Why is it that I experience these irregularities? Is it maybe just normal, but maybe there's also a deeper wisdom to it? And if I regulate that through some medical support, I might get cut off an opportunity to explore these underlying reasons, whether there's imbalances in my diet or in my masculine feminine dynamics or in my lifestyle. Anyway, you can always, of course, look for ways to ease and alleviate symptoms, but ideally not at the expense of deeper exploration. And so I hope that was useful and you now understand that not every bleeding is a menstruation. Oops.